I'm gonna say something that I'm not allowed to say.
I am the greatest.
Alhamdulillah, tomorrow night I'm gonna smash your boy, guys. I'm gonna smash your boy.
Those people that are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that actually do.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the Monsters and Men podcast, where we study monsters and where we study men. John D. Rockefeller, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, Nelson Mandela, Steve Jobs, Jerry Seinfeld, and many, many more. Are these monsters or are these men? And what can we learn from them? Well, keep listening to this podcast and maybe you'll find out. My name is CN. I will be your guide. Let us begin. Hello, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and germs, so on and so forth. Listen, just a few announcements for the podcast. First of all, episode 1 will not be dropping anytime soon. I don't know, because like life is lifing, I suppose. Life is just interesting. I've been quite busy the past few weeks, months, some might say years, and school, work, personal life, so on and so forth. And so I feel like episode 1 will take a little bit longer to drop than I thought it would. And so episode 1 is meant to be, because like, okay, let me just explain. The way, like, for me, the way that I want this podcast to work is that I want to read a biography of a great man, a woman, across time, history, and so on and so forth, who did like amazing things, and then just kind of like look at like the highlights, like the highlights of like the biography of this person, their stories, like their quotes, their considerations, like the things that they believed in, like who they were, and so on and so forth, and then just kind of break that down, and I want to do like hour 30-minute long podcast episodes, and I'm realizing that that's going to take like a lot of time and effort, and I don't want to shy away from that. I don't want to shy away from time and effort and so on and so forth. However, I likely will not get all that much time to do that just yet, not anytime soon. And so, this is why I feel like I want to introduce a kind of short kind of content. And so, instead of like the 1 hour, because like for instance, like the first episode was supposed to be on Steve Jobs. Well, it will be on Steve Jobs, when it comes out. But instead of waiting, an undecided amount of time to drop one hour long episode, I think it would be cool to drop like a mini version, like a 10, 15 minute version of like the podcast, and just kind of keep doing it. So instead of having like an episode 1, have like an episode 0.1 and then 0.2 and so on and so forth. So this first one is going to be on Steve Jobs. And that essentially is it. I hope that makes sense. Essentially what I'm saying is that instead of waiting X number of months for a full 1 hour, 1.5 hour long episode on Steve Jobs. And again, like what's interesting about this is because I've read the biography, I've taken a bunch of notes. I just haven't had time to like record and stuff. And so even with that, I'm definitely planning on doing like 3 parts basically. So each of them about an hour to like an hour and a half long. So that's like it's a lot. Needless to say, it's a lot. And so instead of waiting for that to happen, I think it would be really cool to just do like a 15-minute thing here, tell 1 or 2 Steve Jobs stories, So, okay, let's do that. So, first of all, to kind of explain the concept of Monsters and Men is, like this podcast, what is this podcast? Why did I start it? What is like the concept of Monsters and Men? Steve Jobs is who is Steve Jobs? Steve Jobs is the founder of Apple Computers, right? And the co-founder of Apple Computers. Him and Steve Wozniak started Apple Computers when they were like young. They built it up in Steve's garage, and then eventually Apple Computers became Apple that you see now. So if you're listening to this on like Apple Podcast, okay, actually you probably aren't because this is only on Spotify. There it is. But if you're listening to this on Spotify on an Apple device, i.e., on your, I don't know, can you play this stuff on like Apple watches? I don't know, maybe, probably not. Who knows? Whatever. Who cares? But if you're listening to this on like on your iPhone or something, or on your Mac or iMac or so on and so forth, your MacBook Air. No, yeah, it is just MacBook Air, right? It's MacBooks, not Macs. Jeez, I am not clued into the Apple ecosystem. So if you're listening to this on like an Apple device, Steve Jobs is the co-creator, the co-founder of that company, Apple. So he is one of the reasons that you can flex the way that you do. And so Steve Jobs, the creator of the co-founder of like Apple and everything, he is one of the most, I don't know, one of the most, because I love Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is like one of my heroes as far as like founding is like concerned, you know? Because like what's one of the reasons I wanted to do like the first episode on him. That's one of the reasons the first episode will be on him, you know, because I really, really appreciate that guy. And the thing about Steve Jobs is that he's very polarizing. Steve Jobs could be incredibly cutting, you know, incredibly mean, incredibly hurtful to people, especially in his youth. As he got older, that kind of changed a bit, but like especially in his youth. And it's this idea of like, how do you balance, like the concept of monsters and men is how do you balance this meanness, these cutting remarks, this whole being a monster, and on this other side of the spectrum, you're this great man, and you know you're an inspiration to a bunch of like startup founders, you know, a bunch of tech bros like me. So how do you balance that? And so I think one of the most beautiful things about Steve Jobs specifically was that he cared. Like he cared about like the teeny tiny little details. Like something that his dad taught him, right, was that like, because like, remember these guys are Americans, and so like because they're Americans, they're building like, you know, the proverbial like white picket fences. And so like there's this fence that Steve and his dad built when Steve was like younger, right? And Steve's dad teaches him a very important lesson that he kind of carries on throughout his career, you know, in Apple and just in general, where they have these picket fences, these like white picket fences, and they're painted like on the front and stuff. And on the back, like on the back, they're also like really, really taken care of. So like if you like imagine a cabinet, like a proper cabinet or something that his dad taught him is that like a proper carpenter, a proper like artist makes sure that he takes care of the front of the cabinet, but also the back of the cabinet, even though nobody's going to see it. The back of the cabinet is going to be like up against the wall, you know, but you still care about it. You still need to care about the parts of the product that nobody sees. That's important. That's really, really important. So like, I think it is unfortunate that he was kind of mean when it came to like portraying that idea. But the reason he was mean was because he was really passionate about products, passionate about customers, passionate about doing the best, about about doing the absolute best, not just the bare minimum as far as like these things are concerned. And I love that about him. And I relate to that because every single day I am just perpetually like annoyed by little tiny stupid things. And I really wish people cared more about the way things were designed, the way things were built, you know, the way things kind of come together. Because like later on, I guess, like again, like in the main podcast episode, you'll hear that Steve really wanted to build like an integrated system for like Apple. So he wanted to make sure that the software as well as like the hardware were like built in-house and kind of were integrated together. And so not whereas other systems like Bill Gates as well as like Microsoft, they were selling their software like everywhere, you know. So you could, in theory, like have your own PC, like your own computer, and you can install Microsoft software on there. We still can do that pretty much. And that Steve didn't want that, you know, because it made it difficult to make a truly great product. And one of the hallmarks of like Apple today is Apple's like ecosystem, because of how Apple's ecosystem and because of how everything kind of just fits together seamlessly. You have the Apple Watch, you have the Apple iPhone, you have like the headphones now, you have like the MacBooks, you have the Mac Pros and so on and so forth. And it's just, this is an idea that Steve Jobs really like made famous to some degree, okay? I don't know, okay, I think I'm kind of rambling a bit now. Let me just take a step back and then just tell you like one of my favorite Steve Jobs stories of all time. Every single time I hear this story, like it gives me like proper chills, because like it's such a you'll hear it, but it's such a good story about like what Steve Jobs really cared about, you know, not so much about money, but like about like the product and building a really good product. Okay, so here we go. The year is 1996. Steve Jobs had been kicked out of Apple for a couple of years now and was working on Next computers. Next wanted to sell high-end computers to universities, but ultimately the market just wasn't there at the price point they were selling it for. Basically, Next wasn't doing very well, but Apple was doing worse. Their market share went from 16% to 4% as far as like PC sales are concerned. And one of the CEOs of Apple at the time, tried to sell the company to Sun Microsystems, IBL, or Hewlett Packard, and failed, and was then fired. Oh my. And the latest CEO, like the CEO before Jobs came back, in his first year running the company, Apple lost $1 billion. And the stock price of Apple, which, in the year 1991 was $70, in that year, 1996, fell down to $14 a share. Safe to say Apple wasn't doing very well. Now, a year before this, in 1995, Steve was on Christmas vacation with his family in Kona Village in Hawaii. He was there with one of his best friends, Larry Ellison, the founder and chairman of Oracle. A few fun facts about Larry. As of this year, 2024, he is 79 years old, has an estimated net worth of, according to Forbes, so take this with a grain of salt, of $131 billion, and has had 4 divorces in his life, and currently, Larry has a girlfriend. So, Larry sure is something. Okay, back to the story. Here's an excerpt from the book. During his 1995 Christmas vacation in Kona Village, Hawaii, Jobs went walking along the beach with his friend Larry Ellison, the Oracle chairman. They discussed making a takeover bid for Apple and restoring Jobs as its head. Ellison said he could line up $3 billion in financing. I will buy Apple. You will get 25% of it right away for being the CEO, and we can restore it to its past glory. But Jobs demurred. I decided I'm not the hostile takeover kind of guy, he explained. If they had asked me to come back, it might have been a bit different. Okay, let's scroll down a bit. Oh my. Okay, a year passes. This is 1996, and Steve ends up having a meeting with the CEO of Apple at the time, the one who lost $1 billion his first year there, and he pitches him an idea. Like, Steve pitches the CEO an idea. Buy Next Computers, the company that Steve was running at the time. This wasn't too crazy at the time of an idea, because Apple really needed an operating system, like an OS. Like, imagine Microsoft or iOS and so on. Apple really needed an operating system at the time, and iOS kind of wasn't really a thing. Okay. Apple really needed an operating system and tons of software, and Next had that and more. So, some time passes, and it's Christmas again. So the Jobs family head back to Hawaii. Like last year, Ellison is there too. Okay, here's the excerpt. Jobs and his family went to Hawaii for Christmas vacation. Larry Ellison was also there, as he had been the year before. Larry, I think I found a way for me to get back into Apple and get control without you having to buy it, Jobs said as they walked along the shore. Ellison recalled. He explained his strategy, which was getting Apple to buy Next. Then he would go on the board and be one step away from being the CEO. Ellison thought that Jobs was missing a key point. But Steve, there's one thing I don't understand, he said. If we don't buy the company, how can we make any money? This is what Ellison asked. Now, Jobs put his hand on Ellison's shoulder, pulled him so close that their noses almost touched, and said, Larry, this is why it's really important that I am your friend. You don't need any more money. Like this, man, this just gives me chills every single time. Like, even Steve knew that Ellison didn't need any more, because Ellison, I think, was a billionaire at the time already, and there's just so much more things that are important than money. Money is important, granted, don't get me wrong, but it's just the idea that you can build a product that changes the world, that pushes boundaries, that is just the height of your own creativity, that you can come together with a group of people, decide you want to build something. There's something in the world that does not exist and you want it to exist. The idea that you don't care about the money that can be made from that, but just the creative pursuit. Just the creative pursuit, the creative outlet. Jeez. Okay, I think that's it. I think that's going to be it for the first somewhat short, I don't know, 15 or so minutes. Podcast thingy. We'll see what happens. I think I'll do a little bit less rambling next time, a little bit more storytelling. But until then, I hope this will tide you guys over until eventually episode 1 drops. When will it drop? Who knows? Haha, who knows? We will see. But for now, do impossible things. Have a good day.